Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Riley. I'm the Public Engagement Information Manager for the Victor Valley Union High School District, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our ESSER 3 Community Input Meeting. You may notice, if you're used to watching these live streams, that my surroundings look a little bit different, and that's because we are doing this from home. We have a little network maintenance that's going on in the office tonight, so we're all joining you from our homes tonight. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. And I'm going to start off with our Superintendent, Dr. Ron Williams.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for attending. We really appreciate your input this evening, and we look forward to the questions that you will bring forth for us to respond to. So thank you.
Okay. And this is an educational services topic that we're talking about tonight. So, of course, we have our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services with us. That's Dr. Ramona Yee. How are you doing, Dr. Ramona Yee?
I am well. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here this evening. Just receiving meaningful feedback for our ESSER 3 plan is very important to us. So we appreciate you finding time to join us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay, thank you. And also, this is a topic about spending some money, and our money guy is our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. That's Dr. Antoine Hawkins. He's going to be here just to maybe answer some questions or offer some perspective from Business Services. How are you doing, Dr. Hawkins?
Good evening, Mr. Riley, and good evening, Victor Valley Union High School District community. It's good to be here tonight. We look forward to, I will ditto the superintendent in our Assistant Superintendent Services. It's good to be here this evening, and I look forward to assisting any way I can in answering your questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And also, we have Ms. Christine Foote, and she is the Director of LCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan, as well as many other things that she does. She has a very long title, special projects and all types of things, but she works in our Educational Services Department, and she is kind of instrumental in overseeing this effort with ESSER 3. How are you doing, Ms. Foote?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Riley. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, I do have a long title. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with Dr. Williams, Dr. Yee, and Dr. Hawkins. I look forward to the community input, and we are building a fabulous plan that we know for the next 3 years will support teaching and learning to the best of our ability in our district. So welcome to the Victor Valley Union High School District community. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, if you notice I'm looking at my phone, it's because Dr. Rubel Kaba, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, said he would like to go ahead and join us. I said, you don't have to, but if you want to, I'm going to send you a link. So I'm going to send that off to him right now. While I'm sending that to him, in a nutshell, what we're talking about tonight, we're talking about over $53 million in funding that our district is getting. And now those of you who are familiar with school district funding know that there are specific ways in which those monies can be spent. We can't just wildly spend it on anything. But we want to give you kind of the overview of what this money is, why we're getting it, and some of the ways in which it can be spent. So I'm going to play a video that Ms. Foote put together that she showed at the board meeting. It's a condensed version of that. I'm going to go ahead and play that for you. It's just a couple minutes. Take a look at that, and we'll be back. Okay, here we go.
The American Rescue Plan, ESSER 3, Return to Safe Instruction Plan. What is ARP ESSER 3? ESSER 3 is COVID-19 federal funding for districts from the American Rescue Plan Act. This funding is specifically to address the impact of COVID-19 on schools across our nation. It was signed into law on March 11th of 2021. This plan does require an expenditure plan called the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan. For short, we'll call it Safe Return. Victor Valley Union High School District is eligible to receive an estimated $53 million according to the California Department of Education's schedule of allocations. What is the ESSER 3 Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan? Well, ESSER 3 does require an expenditure plan, but there are 3 specific areas that must be addressed. Strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning, addressing lost instructional time, and a minimum of 20% of our $53 million must be spent and allocated in this area. and use of any remaining funds that are allowable or allocable according to the grant guidelines. What is the purpose of ESSER 3 Safe Return? ESSER 3 is provided to expand current grants and plans through September of 2024. ESSER 3 must support current actions and services from existing plans, such as the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, LCP, Learning Communities and School Success Program Grant, LCSSP, Local Control and Accountability Plan, the LCAP, and Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, ELO. They must address the following areas: support prevention and mitigation of COVID-19 to safely reopen schools for in-person instruction, address the academic impact of lost instructional time through the implementation of evidence-based interventions, and respond to the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of all students and staff, particularly those students disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So far, these are the ESSER 3 suggested areas of focus based on our current feedback in place. A safe, full reopening of schools with safetiness and cleanliness as our priorities. Academic support in core content areas, credit recovery, extended learning time, 24-hour tutoring. We also want to support visual and performing arts. We also want to ensure our career technical education continues to flourish. We want distance learning supports in place because we have students still learning in the home. We want the most current technology, Chromebooks, hotspots, internet access points, and laptops for students and staff. We want to address social emotional and staff and student mental health, involve peer counseling, look at stress relief and wellness areas, and continue to support PBIS and multi-tiered systems of support. We have extensive professional development we would like to support, including academic and social emotional learning. We want targeted supports for our low-income students, our special education students, English learner students, foster youth, and homeless youth. We want to continue to promote remote and virtual learning options and continue to use our Google environment successfully with students and staff. We also want supplemental programs that promote student engagement, such as AVID, ROTC, Cadet Corps, and more. If you have further questions, please feel free to contact us at the following email addresses: Christine Foote at cfoot@vvuhsd.org or Dr. Ramoni Yee at ryee@vvuhsd.org. We appreciate your attendance tonight, and thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you for that. And I want to introduce Dr. Ramiro Rubalcaba. He is our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. And we didn't ask him to be here tonight, but he was able to join us anyway, which of course we really appreciate because we have our entire cabinet here. So thank you, Dr. R, for coming in to join us. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Happy to be here and support our efforts.
All right, thanks, Dr. R. So we got the whole cabinet here. We got our superintendent, we got Ms. Foote, and we're here to talk about ESSER 3. And I think hopefully this video sheds some light on it. But Ms. Foote, is there anything more you'd like to say about it?
I think the most important thing to remember about the ESSER 3 plan that the video touched upon but didn't stress was this plan is really designed to support other plans that we've had in place. When we went into COVID and we came back into distance learning during the 2020-2021 school year, we developed the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. And that plan really had a lot of great strategies, a lot of great supports, a lot of great ideas that were only implemented for 1 year. And the federal government in the state of California realizes that some of those wonderful things we put in place for teachers and families and students, we need to continue those supports onward and forward as we move into 2024. So that's why they've decided we can use that funding to go back into our old plans, go back to the LCAP, go back to the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, go back to the Learning Community School Success Grant, and pull those great ideas forward and keep those ideas moving forward until 2024. And then at that point in time, we can reevaluate with our current funding and look at the LCAP again and use evidence-based like interventions and meetings and get feedback from families and students and community of what we want to continue to fund. So I think this is a great opportunity to extend those plans and really give time for some of these programs and these services we've implemented to come to fruition and see if it really makes a difference for students and families and teachers. 1 year is often not enough time. Research will show you 3 to 5 years to truly implement a program and see whether or not it's working for our students and get sufficient data to discover that information.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Foote. Anybody else want to say anything else about the ESSER 3 plan before we move on to some questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, I do have a question in here. So this is Linda Huey. Is it possible to implement something where the class can be streamed online for students that are home on quarantine? That way there is no real loss of instruction time. So this would be Dr. Yee or Ms. Foote. Whoever wants to take that.
I'll go ahead and speak.
Okay.
I think at this point in time, I understand that we've implemented technology that does allow for live streaming in the classroom. I think we're working with teachers and we're working with our union executive cabinet to make sure that the teachers are prepared, they have enough professional development, and that we're able to offer that service. I think it's a possibility. I think with the future of COVID-19 and the different variants that are coming out and the I would think the susceptibility that our students have to catching certain variants might lend itself to having a blended environment where it's co-synchronous, where teachers are teaching and students at home are learning as well as the students in the classroom. I think it's a possibility. I think we're exploring that, and I hope we can move towards that in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, let's kind of recap what we're talking about here. So we're talking about $53 million in funding, and we have a lot of different ways we can spend this money. It is somewhat limited, but let's talk about some of the concrete ways. I know we went over it in the video a little bit, but let's talk about some of the concrete ways in which this money can be spent. Just some examples, some real world examples, and how they might affect someone's student. And then perhaps we can get some feedback from the audience. I know you're out there. We've got 60 of you watching us right now, so don't be shy. Maybe you have some opinions on how we can spend this money. So Ms. Foote, if you can do that, and then we have a couple questions in that we will get to.
So the different ways that we can spend this funding, primarily it is also to support safe return for in-person instruction. So they're really looking at the environment that our students are learning in, and are we taking specific, I would say, putting specific structures and protocols and cleaning structures in place. That way we can mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So a large portion of that money needs to be continued to provide them a safe environment. And that could be everything from air purifiers in the classroom to personal protective equipment to buying supplementary sets of materials in classrooms so students have their own set of materials and they're not sharing materials and cross-contaminating materials, things such as that nature. So that is the primary goal of the funding. The second goal is really that learning loss. So we're looking at what can we do to extend learning and accelerate learning for students. We know that not all students learned to their fullest potential in the distance learning format that we had last year. So how do we now put in structures during the daytime, during actual class time, so where students get that extra support? Can we do things on Saturdays? Can we do things after school? Can we have online programs where we work with vendors or we work with outside consultants to provide students extra learning in the home in the evenings, working with them and their families? So that's the other really important piece of this puzzle that we're putting together to create this amazing plan to accelerate learning for our students. And then whatever else is allowable, and allowable things come from the CDE website. There's an ARP Act funding federal stimulus page on the California Department of Education that really goes over very detailed what you can and cannot spend this funding on. They list it, they're very clear. They really do want you to follow these guidelines and ensure that we're spending money in ways that reach these areas. And then we also are going to measure this funding. We're going to measure the impact of the services we're providing. We're going to look at metrics. We're going to give surveys. We're going to use our panorama survey data. We're going to give climate surveys. We're going to see if this is making a difference, because we do have this funding for 3 years, and we'll be able to spread it out over 3 years and continue to adjust it as we move along.
Thank you. And we have a lot of questions that are now popping in. Everybody's coming in at once here, so I want to try to get a few of these answered. But yeah, there are specific ways in which the money can be used. If people have ideas and say that's not an ESSER 3 thing, well, we can still get your input for things that you desire to have in your district, and it's certainly valuable to get that input no matter what. So I'm just going to go in order. We're going to start out here with Cynthia. She says that in terms of health and safety, I know that Hook needs at least 20 more trash cans placed around campus. It would greatly reduce the trash found on the ground and would free up custodial time to work in other areas. Is getting more trash cans a possibility?
So if you may, Ms. Foote, let me take that question, because a principal, I just did a sidewalk at one of our schools and we had a discussion about that. That type of request, or that type of to mitigate that comes out of what we call our RMA, which is routine maintenance account. What happens in the California system is that the maintenance and operations branch or section of the school district, where we have housed our custodians, our gardeners, and all of those types of job classifications, they get an amount of funding per year that is sort of in line with our reserve for economic uncertainties. So to your point, one of the things that I just talked to a principal about yesterday, and I'll be talking to the director of maintenance, is that we're going to look at those type of metal trash cans and make sure that we have a little bit more on the campuses. So we'll be looking at that at a district-wide level.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's go in order here. Let's go to Christopher. He says, how can ESSER 3 funds benefit our music, visual, and performing arts programs in our district?
I can actually take that one too, Mr. Riley.
All right, go for it.
And actually, what we appreciated was when we were at our board meeting, a couple of board meetings ago, one of our student board members actually mentioned about supporting the VAPA program. So we went ahead and listened to our students, and also some of our teachers had mentioned it to us as well. So we have set some money aside to support our visual and performing arts, whether it is music, instruments, repairs, and things of that nature. So right now we are appreciating those feedback, and we do have a line item to address that.
Okay, thanks a lot. Also, I just want to say, while we were talking here, I got an email from somebody saying that they were clicking the link and it wasn't working. So those of you who are watching us, there's 80 of you watching us right now. So if you know someone who's trying to get in and can't, maybe make sure they have the right link, share it with them. So let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer says, can some of the funds be used for buses on schools that don't have any, and provide disposable and reusable masks that are easy for children to breathe? So this might touch on a Dr. Hawkins area and perhaps a Dr. Rubalcaba area. So maybe Dr. Hawkins, you want to take it first?
So I'll start first. Those funds are not allocated for school transportation. And, that's a very good question. Unfortunately, in the state of California, we're not reimbursed for the transportation cost or expenditure that we incur each year. Our encroachment in transportation, and what we mean by that is money that is not allocated in our general fund has to pick up the expense to make sure that the program runs. It's over $4.4 million per year. And the state uses an antiquated funding formula that's from what I'll say back in the day. And so those funds, however, when it comes specifically to your question, the funds that are allocated are in 16 primary areas. Ms. Foote addressed this earlier, and then there are 9 sub areas. And unfortunately, transportation is not included in that. And
Okay.
Dr. Rubalcaba, you can take the second part of the question.
Sure, thank you. A great question. The short answer is yes. Yes, we can use funds for PPE, as Ms. Christine Foote shared. And yes, we actually do have a number of types of masks that are acceptable. We have the surgical masks that are 3-ply, but pretty easy to breathe through. We have reusable masks that students can take home and wash and reuse. We also have face shields with a drape for those students that may have that challenge. That is permissible as long as it's a face shield with a drape. And then, of course, a student can bring in their own face mask as long as it's an appropriate mask approved by CDPH. But the short answer is yes, we can make that available. And if you do have challenges with that, start with your principal, let your principal know. And then, of course, if needed, please reach out to us at the district office, and we would be happy to support you.
All right, thanks a lot. And we're so happy that Dr. Rubalcaba was able to pop in here. He's our COVID guy, our COVID response guy, I should say. And he's really all over that. So that's great. Okay, so Elena is asking us, possibilities for lab sciences too. PPEs are needed for labs such as gloves and more alcohol wipes to keep collaborative spaces clean.
I'll be happy to start. So the short answer is yes. We do have gloves available. Yes. I'm not sure about the alcohol wipes. I'd have to check into that. But we do have wipes that are appropriate, that do have, I believe, 60 to 70% alcohol content. And those have been made available to each school site. We do have the buckets of wipes that are made accessible to students when they walk into the classroom. So they're able to grab those from this really cool pencil-like stand, and they're able to wipe down their work area. And that would also include a science lab. So we have a lot in stock, and we monitor that closely. So the short answer is yes, that is available. Once again, start with your teacher, your principal, and if they're unable to provide the answer you need, please reach out to us at the district office.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rubalcaba. And I'm going to go to Cynthia. Cynthia is a teacher, and I mentioned that because you'll see from this comment that she is a teacher, and so that's where this concern is coming from. So Cynthia says, Hook needs full class sets of textbooks. Many weren't returned by students from distance learning, and asking them to share right now isn't good for germ spreading. I only have 12 textbooks and 37 students. I don't know where we want to send this question to.
I can
Dr.
speak on that.
Williams, Ms. Foote? Okay,
Dr.
Ms. Foote, go
Williams.
ahead.
Well, the understanding when it comes to purchasing our textbooks, when we're looking at hard copy textbooks, during distance learning, we made an effort to turn around and we purchased electronic versions of all of our books, especially the board adopted curriculum that we have for English, Math, Social Studies, and Science. So students do have an electronic book that they have access to from wherever they might have internet access. Classroom sets of books are not required by law when it comes to our Williams review. So every year we have certain schools that are reviewed, and we have to make sure we have one-on-one textbooks. And one of the requirements of Williams is that every student in our school has access to a textbook for every class that we offer a textbook. And so students are checked out a textbook. What that often does is it doesn't leave us enough books to create full class sets for teachers, where we experience, like almost like a 2-to-1 situation where there's a book in the class and a book at home. So right now we're not at that point. I know that as a district, we've been working towards that point, but whenever we have a new adoption, we also have the challenges of ordering those materials, having those materials delivered. There was a shortage of materials at the beginning of this year, and we were scrambling and trying to make sure every student had what they needed for our Williams visits. But right now, a classroom set of materials is truly almost a luxury until we can continue to purchase those materials and have those materials returned to the school, and then we deem them available to make a classroom set. But we don't automatically purchase classroom sets when we buy textbooks. We purchase them on a one-to-one basis to make sure every student has access for a book.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, was there anything you wanted to add about that one?
No, I was just gonna sit down and say, and I think Christine probably addressed it very clearly. When we're looking at our Williams settlement in particular, the traditional textbook is not a requirement for us to maintain for students. We must keep it in. We have it in electronic format, so it was right on point what she said.
Okay, great. And as I said at the top, we are all doing these from home tonight because we had a network maintenance that just happened to be scheduled the same time we're doing this live stream. So you may at some point hear a cat meowing. He's meowing right now. He's quite loud, and don't worry, the cat is okay. He's just a very fussy cat sometimes, so don't worry about him. We have a question here. I'm going to try my best with your name, Zhang, or something like that. I'm sorry if I messed it up. Can on-campus clubs benefit from ESSER 3? And who would like to take that on?
I
Ms.
can
Foote,
answer that.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Since I have been living and breathing ESSER 3 for like the last 2 months, campus clubs are considered extracurricular activities. Extracurricular activities are often only funded through fundraising events, funds that may be generated through your ASB activities, through the sale of ASB cards, other events that they have on campus. Most clubs are self-sustaining. They fundraise, they generate their own funds, they take donations, and then they use that money to do extracurricular things that they enjoy as a club. So if you have a club that's a gaming club and they want to buy gaming consoles, many times we cannot use that kind of funding to support clubs because that funding is going to improving teaching and learning and increasing the number of students that are graduating on time. And so when you have a club and it's very specific to an interest or an engaging activity that students like to do beyond the school day, it's often self-sustaining and they support themselves with their own funds. And we cannot use grant funding to support those programs, unfortunately.
Okay. This is Amanda Buchanan, who is one of our longtime teachers, and she says, it would be amazing if we could purchase more Chromebooks for students to use at home, especially when they are quarantined. I have some students who have been asking to check out a device since the first day, and they still do not have anything.
So you want to go ahead, Christy?
Well, I'm excited because Dave Bertelson, who is the director of educational technology on our team, him and his team have been working behind the scenes to make this happen. We did order Chromebooks. We ordered a lot of Chromebooks. We ordered so many Chromebooks that they couldn't even fill our orders. So what's happening now is they are preparing those Chromebooks and they're working with the CMSs, which is the technology person at each school site, to prepare those Chromebooks for checkout. And they're working out a checkout process using the district library technicians. So very soon those are rolling out. We were wiring Chromebook carts because that does take time and effort once we get all the materials in, putting together the materials to roll out to the classrooms. So I know Mr. Bertelson is excited that those Chromebooks are coming. You should be checking them out any day now. So we're very excited for that. Of course, we do have to use a priority service model, which students need them the most, because we do need to service our foster youth, our homeless youth, some of our low-income students that really need those materials and those devices in the home because they don't have one in the home. So Ms. Buchanan, please double check with your principal. Those items should be rolling out any day now. I know we have quite a few at every school site now, and they're getting ready. They're ready for checkout.
Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
if I can just add to that, I think that Ms. Foote was very, very articulate in her response. I've had a conversation with Mr. Bertelson, our director of technology, and we're making sure that, to your point, our teacher's point, that we are authorizing our staff to work the hours that is needed to get it done, because we understand that that's a critical component to a student's educational success. And also, finally, I want to say that if we see that there is an additional need when it comes to Chromebooks on the horizon after we go through this process, we also will build into those resources that are available to us the ability to purchase additional resources as a good tool for students to aid in their educational learning.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Jared says, could we use it to hire additional teachers, thus reducing class sizes, safety, and addressing learning loss? So in a nutshell, the question is, can we use this money to hire teachers? And Ms.
I can
Foote,
address
Dr.
that
Yee?
if you like, and
Yeah,
Ms.
Dr. Yee,
please
go
feel
ahead.
free. Yeah, I think we have to be reminded also that this is one-time money. So anything that we put into our plan will go away within 3 years, because again, like Ms. Foote said, the plan will expire in 2024. So there are certain positions as well that we can put in there, but it wouldn't be something that we could continue to do. So a lot of times when it comes to one-time monies like that, we want to make sure that we're able to somewhat sustain it as well. Ms. Foote, I don't recall adding any of that line item onto our plan to hire for class size reduction.
Yeah. And I'd also like to share that Dr. Hawkins and I looked over the ARP acting funding federal stimulus guidelines very closely today. And really the guidelines do not recommend hiring additional staff because it is limited funding. But when we have certain staff in other plans, for example, we use the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant and we want to hire 7 LVNs or registered nurses to be at the school site. So every school has a nurse, which we've never had before, and a mental health clinician at every school site to address mental health. Because we were using limited or 1-year funding for that, we can take that service, that piece of the ELO plan, and we can move it into the ESSER plan and continue to fund those services. And then at the end of 2 years, we do an evaluation and decide if those services are still necessary. And then at that point, then we have to shift around our base funding and our LCFF, SCG, our local control funding formula money, the money that we get every year, and decide what is a priority for our students and parents and teachers. So I think that's important to remember as well.
Okay,
Well
thanks
said.
a
I
lot.
won't add to it.
Okay. And now I think we already covered this. Candy Reynoso says, hi, good evening. Can we get more buses with less students so that they are not too crowded? And I believe, Dr. Hawkins, you said that we cannot use this money for transportation. However, like I also said, it's good just to hear these opinions and see what we might be able to do one way or another. So, Dr. Hawkins, I don't know if there's any more you want to say about that.
I would like to say this. There is a big challenge on the horizon for the fiscal year 22-23 school year that deals with the changing of instructional time in terms of the starts for senior high school students or for high school students. We've built into our budget some mitigation strategies regarding that. A part of that would be the purchase of buses and potential bringing on staff as well, if that law definitely comes to fruition. However, that's on the horizon, so we do have some plan for that piece. But then again, I'd like to reiterate what I said earlier when it comes to using ESSER dollars, either ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, ARP. Those dollars have to be allocated towards their intended purpose, and that is not one of the intended purposes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm trying to get to some folks who haven't been able to ask a question yet, and we have a few other people who've asked several, and I will come back to you, I promise. I just do want to get to some other folks. So just really quickly here, Justin says he's asking about bus aides and nurses that have been unavailable for special education. I'm not sure exactly what that situation is, but would anyone like to address that one?
I can go ahead and address that one. We are, our district and many districts across the state are experiencing the same things, maybe even the nation actually, where there's just lack of special ed teachers, special ed instructional aides, bus aides, and so forth. Within a child's IEP that requires them to have these special services, it isn't something that ESSER 3 would necessarily pay for. It would actually just come from our base funding and our general fund because it does support our special needs students. So with regards to that, I know that it's been really challenging, and we're just trying to do our best to encourage people and recruit people to apply. And then when they apply, we just don't have enough applicants at the moment, but we are trying our best.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about it all the time, the labor shortage, and you've heard about it in some of these what I call poverty jobs, which are these jobs that are fast food and that type of thing that really don't pay adequately, and so it's no wonder that some of those places can't find people to work for them. However, we do pay pretty well. I mean, I think so. And I know that there may be a point of contention there or two, but we're talking about professional jobs, and sometimes we're unable to fill these jobs. It's just a very interesting situation that we're having across the nation, as you said, Dr. Yee, of just being unable to fill these positions. So we continue to do our best. If you know anyone who needs a job, get in touch with us. Go to our website, vvuhsd.org. Dr. Rubalcaba, would you like to say anything about the labor shortage and the challenge of just getting enough people to do the work?
Sure. So it does boil down to recruitment and retention strategies. And I think it's really forcing us as especially human resources professionals to think outside the box and what are some of the things that can motivate potential employees or people to apply, applicants or candidates to our district. And so we are exploring ways, everything from increasing compensation looking at ways that we can support with stipends, sign-on bonuses, and the such. And then another factor that's really important is looking at the culture and climate of a district and making sure that it's attractive in order to retain our employees, taking care of our employees. So there are a variety of strategies, partnering up with universities, partnering up with training institutions and technical schools to create a pipeline of students to our positions. So we are exploring, we're getting really creative. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that we're really focusing on a career ladder. And that was the direction of the superintendent and the board. How do we convert our internal people to continue to promote? So for example, we have a lot of instructional aides that are becoming teachers. We had a few teachers who are becoming administrators. And we want to create that pipeline from within to motivate people to advance in their careers.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we do have quite a bit of questions and comments here. So Cynthia says that we're going through boxes of masks every day. We need more wipes. 190 kids, 190 wipes. Each bucket only has 250. This may relate to Dr. Hawkins or Dr. Rubalcaba. I don't know which one of you would like to speak on that one.
I'll let Dr. Rubalcaba speak on it.
Thank you. So Ms. Mead, is it Cynthia? We actually have a very healthy supply of both masks and wipes. We did factor in that, a teacher can go through close to 200 wipes on a given day because some teachers have 170 plus students on their caseload that they see on a daily basis, depending on if you have a 6-period day or 7-period day. So we actually have you covered. What we want you to do is just make sure that you work with your site administration, who works with our risk manager and my department in human resources to make sure that they have stock. We have delivered pallets of these wipes and pallets of these masks. So we feel very confident that we have what we need to keep everyone safe.
And I just put this question up here while you were talking, Dr. Rubalcaba. Jennifer Lopez Amaya. She says every student should be given a box for monthly use. That would be awesome to avoid spending so much at home. Is that feasible? Do we have the resources to do that?
Well, what we do, instead of giving each student a box to take home, because sometimes students may forget it or what have you, we actually give them away at the school site. The times that I've gone to a school site and helped out with supervision in the morning, for example, when I was recently at Lakeview, I grabbed a box of masks. I stood out there in the front, welcomed families, and handed out masks for those students who needed them. They knew that they were available, and they would just come up and say, "Can I have a mask, please?" And say, "Hey, no problem." So no one expects, a family to put out a pocket and pay for the masks. We also have reusable masks that we can give you, and the students can take them home, wash them, and bring them every day as needed. So we have both disposable and reusable masks available for your student.
Thank you, Dr. Rubalcaba. So we have a few people going back and forth about digital or physical textbooks. So I'm not going to show every single comment here, but so for instance, Lindy Huey says, most students have access to Chromebooks now. Can we not just pay whatever is needed for the digital versions of these textbooks? I know Pearson has digital copies of the books. Cynthia says, the electronic textbook isn't working well. It's clunky and hard to navigate. A physical book would be way better. So we have a couple different perspectives on that. But I just wanted to talk about, first of all, the feasibility of having digital copies of all the books, and is that preferable or not? And what are the economic and other concerns with that situation? So textbooks would fall under
us.
Who wants it?
Under Ed Services.
Under Ed
Okay.
Services.
Okay.
So what I can share.
Go ahead.
I can share that when we went into distance learning, we purchased digital versions of all of our board adopted textbooks. And if we had a textbook, such as say a Spanish language 4 textbook or an AP textbook that did not have any digital components to it, we supplemented and we had those teachers select digital components to supplement that board adopted textbook, because we understood not every textbook was available in a digital version. So what we did was we went above and beyond to purchase as many digital materials as possible, understanding that distance learning was happening and our students needed access to those materials. So we do have digital versions for just about every board adopted text. If we don't, we have a supplementary digital material. And looking at the purchase of additional hard copy textbooks, I think it really would depend once we finish with our current adoptions, because we just did a history social science adoption. We just did a science adoption, which was very, very expensive and included a lot of materials. And every time we do an adoption, we also purchase the digital version of the book, in addition to a hard copy one-on-one text for the students. So some of our older textbooks, we may not have enough copies, but we would have to look at once we've purchased what is necessary to ensure that we have a strong program, then we can look at what's available and if we can purchase more hard copy textbooks in the future.
Christine, if I may add also too,
Yes.
I know in our district, we go through a very robust and very comprehensive adoption process. And remember that when we make textbook selections, it isn't Ms. Foot or myself or our CNI team sitting there going, oh, we like this one, we like that one. It really involves a lot of stakeholder input. We do put it out for the public to come and look at it, a lot of teacher feedback, so that a lot of people are involved in that process. And ultimately, we do develop those kind of criteria as far as what kind of textbooks are we looking for? Does it have a digital format? Is it good for special needs students? Does it have a lot of language, academic language that will really support our English learners? So it is a lengthy process, but very comprehensive, involves a lot of people. So I just wanted to put it out there as well too. And the other thing about sometimes is giving students options. You know, if I know a student that doesn't work well with the textbook online, then, you know, that is where, you know, if maybe they need a hard copy or something like that. So giving students some options like that is also very helpful.
Mr. Riley, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. The cat I was referring to earlier was meowing, so I muted myself. But so Marla Shackelford, who has her name on a gym, as a matter of fact, over at Hook Junior High School. She says, "Well, when the Wi-Fi is working, not then what?" Talking about the textbooks, and then Demisha's saying, "So will that replace textbooks?" And what I hear you saying, and what Dr. Yee was just saying, is like having both options is optimal, right? That's kind of the goal that we have. We can go either way, right? Is that the bottom line? Okay, so
Yes.
let me go on here now. This is one person's perspective, and I don't know what school site they're at, so you know, we'll just see what they have to say here. But Javier Ortega says daily custodial services provided to each classroom are minimal. The maximum services that the custodial staff provides to each classroom comes down to emptying trash cans. Is there a way that these funds can be used to provide better services to our classrooms, i.e. vacuum, wipe down desks, clean chairs, maybe weekly, maybe increase the supervision of current expected services by such departments? So custodial services does fall under the umbrella of Dr. Hawkins. I don't know if you'd like to speak to this one at all, Dr. Hawkins.
Oh, of course. I understand during the COVID-19 pandemic, not just for our community, but our staff, the continual, consistent cleaning of our facilities is paramount. We want our community to know that we are serious about providing a clean and safe environment for our students and for our staff. One of the challenges that the district has been facing, unfortunately, is that we have had a challenge hiring substitutes in order to meet the need that we have when we have absenteeism. I've had a recent conversation with our director of maintenance and operations, who will also be circling around with our supervisor. There was a situation just this day that came to my attention relative to the cleaning of a location, and my direction was to move some person from another location to get the area clean, because that's a non-negotiable. So specifically to your question, we're looking at those types of challenges. We are what I call looking at leveling our employees to make sure that all areas are covered. If you are at a site, and I want to speak this to our staff, and you are going through some challenges, I think that point number one deals with you addressing the challenge to your site administrator, so we can have that put in the work order system, and then we can hold individuals accountable. One of the things that we really, really need to have on our end as a management team is proper data to know where the deficiencies are and how we can then scale up and operationalize support in order for you to have what you need in your environment to be successful, which is cleanliness. So we all get it. That's not anything we're going to debate. We understand where you're coming from and what your need is, and we're going to do the best of our ability to make sure that we have substitute staffing and that we also have our employees that are with fidelity implementing good cleaning practices.
Dr. Hawkins, while I have you up on the screen here, we just had a question about Chromebooks. Jennifer wonders if those who have old Chromebooks can exchange them because some of the old ones are hard to get Wi-Fi and don't work properly.
Yeah, I personally don't have a challenge with that. I don't think that anyone on the team has a challenge with that. Tech ed is under my wheelhouse. If there's a deficiency that's identified, let the teacher know, let the principal know, so that we can go through the process to make sure that if we need to change that Chromebook out, that is changed out. Because one of the things that we have to ensure is that when we give students technology, we give them computers, Chromebooks, whatever it is, that it's working, it's in order so that they can complete their assignments. So that is not a challenge whatsoever. Start at those two levels that I just shared with you. And like Dr. Rubalcaba said earlier, if it's not mitigated at those two levels, contact the district office. You can contact me personally, send an email, ahawkins@vvuhsd.org, and we will make sure that your challenge is addressed.
Okay, thank you so much. And just going back to the tech ed, this is more of a comment than a question, but it says, I have no doubt the tech ed is working like crazy on these packages. She corrected that to projects in the next comment. But she said our CMS, that's computer, what does that stand for? CMS.
Computer media specialist.
That's right. We love our acronyms in education. Our computer media specialist is amazing. It is a massive job. Thank you. Well, thank you, Amanda, for that very nice comment.
Thank you, Ms. Buchanan. That's phenomenal. I'll be sure to share that with Mr. Bertelson, his staff, tomorrow.
Okay, and so moving on, Adriana Lechuga, she says, will schools that have junior high and high school have staggered start times due to the new legislation? Okay, this isn't specifically related to ESSER, but it's a good question. We had something about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Staggered start times due to the new legislation regarding school start times. Also, just lobbying for busing for all schools. Okay, Adriana, we hear you there, but as far as the question about staggered start times, I know Dr. Williams, when you heard this question first raised a while back, you found that interesting, and so maybe you could talk about that, and Dr. Hawkins could talk a little bit about it too.
Yes, at this particular point in time, we are moving, we're sort of like in limbo in regards to starting time. So there's a likelihood that our middle schools next year will be starting at 8 o'clock, and our high schools will be starting at 8:30, which will impact our busing. I think I'll let Dr. Hawkins share our busing expenses that we might incur as a result of this.
Well, again, thank you for the question, and I'll ditto what our superintendent said. And I want our community to know that unless there's some change in the legislation, staggered start times would greatly impact not just the Victor Valley Union High School District, but every school district in the state of California that has high school students. Sometimes we have elementary districts that don't have high school students and middle school students and so forth. So what we're going to do and what we've done the best we can to, as I said earlier, regarding this question, kind of operationalize it. Albeit the legislature has given direction in terms of those changes in the start times, it's still hope out there that they would retract that and go back to something that makes a little bit more sense for everyone. Because if the state does not give us the resources to be able to implement it, then it becomes an operational challenge, indeed a nightmare for all school districts who have to look at that. So what I would say is, continue to stay tuned regarding our district news briefs on our website. We'll give the community additional information as we get closer to that start time, but we have looked at the expense of additional buses and the expense of personnel, which I believe we'd have to add about 21 additional drivers, and that is an expense that would be increased to our bottom line. So we'll keep you abreast of what's happening in terms of the news.
Okay, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about security here. Cynthia says that Hook needs a female security guard, and then Valerie Ann Ledesma says Hook needs more security altogether. Another cop on campus would be great. So what would we like to say about that? Dr. Rubalcaba, would you like to jump in there?
Yeah, we are aware that there are schools, including Hook, that need either to replace security because there are vacancies or substitute security staff who are absent. And we are working on a plan to make that happen. I will look into what was shared that male security guards are patrolling female restrooms and locker rooms. We will look into that right away, as that is of great concern and does not sound appropriate, but I want to make sure that I validate that. And I will personally go to Hook tomorrow morning and inquire. As far as having another school resource officer at this time, we do have a probation officer assigned to Hook. We do not have a school resource officer at this time. We are looking at our school resource officers that we currently have been working very closely with principals and the captain and with the board to explore what we need as a district in order to keep our students, families, and staff safe. So thank you for sharing that concern. I will share with the superintendent cabinet what I find tomorrow. And if you'd like to contact us, we'd be happy to give you an update after I inquire.
Okay, thank you. And before we get too far along here, it is almost 7 o'clock. Time flies. I did get an email suggestion from Ebony Purcell, and she's one of our principals. She's our principal over at Adelanto High School. So it's always great to hear from her. So she says her suggestions would be halo calling / fighting safety sensors for bathrooms, wellness corners supplies, student incentives for school, safety and engagement support and training. So thank you very much, Ebony. And I don't know if Ms. Foote or Dr. Yee, if there's anything you'd like to say about that.
I just think Ebony is wonderful, and she's actually about 3 days ahead of schedule because we do have a principals roundtable on Monday. Ms. Foote will be presenting a similar presentation and also getting feedback from principals. Again, stakeholder feedback is very important to us. So Ebony, keep those ideas rolling, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on Monday.
Okay. And I do want to say that Ms. Nancy Noble from Hook just sent me an email that's about 4 paragraphs long, and she says she doesn't mind that this is not read in the meeting because it's too long. And I'm going to have to agree with you, Ms. Noble, unfortunately, because we only have 7 minutes left, but I'm going to forward it to Dr. Yee and Ms. Foote so they can read it, and it does get the attention it deserves. So let me just try to power through some of these questions that we have here. I believe what we're talking about here is COVID testing. It doesn't explicitly say that, but I believe that's what the question is. Would site testing be possible to expand? Right now, it's convenient to take the test, but it takes too long to get results. Dr. Rubalcaba?
Sure. The short answer is yes. We're working with our vendor because there was previously a concern shared that it takes a little too long to get results. Right now, we're looking at approximately 48 hours to get results is what they've shared with us. We have inquired about possibly a rapid test that would give us, results within about 15 minutes. So we are looking into that. The good news is that the district, the superintendent governing board has offered for quite some time now weekly testing at no cost to students and staff. And then as needed for students who want modified quarantine, we test them twice a week. In fact, we have the ability to test more often than twice a week even, but we are looking into the possibility of a rapid test or something that would provide quicker results. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, and this is a question about what these funds can be used for. Can funds be used to contract retired teachers for the 3 years of the grant to supplement online instruction?
The
Is
answer
that-
to go ahead,
Go ahead.
Christine.
Well, I'm excited to share that in the plan, we've realized that there is a need to expand our virtual academy. Last year, we started with, I think we ended the year with approximately 64 students, and right now we are at 274. So because we started the virtual academy with our learning continuity plan, and then we rolled it to our expanded learning opportunities grant, we're going to continue to fund the virtual academy with the ESSER 3 grant, and we're going to expand staffing at that school particularly because it is a fully online school, and students who still do not feel safe to come to the classrooms, or their parents do not want them in the classroom because they may have an underlying health condition that makes COVID very dangerous for them, that we will be expanding the amount of space that we have at the virtual academy. So that is one area we are going to be looking at. As for hiring retired teachers, it's a great idea. Maybe we can write that down. We can consider it. We can discuss it as a team and go back and look at what's allowable with the funding.
Okay, thank you so much. I know there's a lot of questions in here. Some of them are on some of the same topics like security. There's a lot of people who want more security at Hook. So we hear you. We're seeing that and we're taking that into consideration. Dr. Rubalcaba is on that. Adriana Lechuga, can funds be used to implement a dual immersion program? I am assuming she's talking about dual language immersion. And I will turn that over to our Ed Services people, Dr. Yee and Dr. Foote. I mean, Ms. Foote, sorry.
I know that a dual immersion program hasn't been a part of our former program in ELO or LCAP. So it is something that we could absolutely look at. I think it requires a little bit more research and conversations around what that would look like and the cost around it. So I don't know if we can necessarily do it for this time around, but definitely a conversation we can have in the future.
Okay, and Dr. Hawkins, can you tell us, I just want to put $53 million in perspective for the folks at home. Now, $53 million is a lot of money, right? If any of us had that kind of windfall in our personal bank account, we would be ecstatic, of course. But can you tell us what is the operating annual budget of a school district our size so we can put that in perspective a little bit?
So our general operating budget without any add-ons, and what I mean by add-on, I'm defining that as ESSER dollars, hovers around $155 million per year. So when you see our budget that is now sitting at for the current fiscal year, last fiscal year was about 185, and we'll be ticking about 185 around there for 21-22. That is purely because we've had additional monies rolling in from GEAR funds, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. We have not actually, and I was going to speak to this in closing comments, received our ESSER 3 funding allocation yet. We do what we call book that. We anticipate receiving it. We've done our assurances. And what that means is that once we do our assurances that we're going to, with fidelity, implement the spending plan that we say we are, a part of that process is what we're doing now. Ms. Foote will have additional meetings with the community and so forth. She's already went to the board once. We go back to the board, and then the board adopts the plan. That all ties into how we spend these resources. So it's in when you look at, let's say, in the context of what our normal budget is, you look at 55 million one time to generally 155 million, 160 or so. That's the context that I would answer that in.
Okay. So I want to just I want to speed through some of these things, and Ebony, I did see your email. I'm sorry it took me a while to get to it, but she did comment this here on Facebook as well, and then she did explain what the sensor is. It detects vape, the type of vape, THC, tobacco, bullying, fighting, vandalism. So definitely sounds like a great idea. And
that's something we'll look at. I was going to ask her to let us know what was a halo sensor, but now I think we have it.
Yeah, and I was wondering too. I'm like, this must be some lingo I don't know. I just always assume there's some cutting edge stuff I don't know. So that's awesome, Ebony, and thank you for suggesting that. And let me just try to get through a couple of these. Wellness centers on campus for students and staff. This is Andrea Gonzalez. Is that something feasible we can talk about?
Actually, wellness centers were written into our ELO grant. And we set aside enough money in the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, and the money in that grant sunsets on September 30th of 2022. So that funding is set aside for school sites to identify an area, and they plan and they purchase and they go ahead and create a wellness area or a wellness center. But it might look different at each school site based on what type of space they have available. But that money is there, it's available, it's in the ELO plan. We presented it last spring and the money is waiting. We just really do truly need, I think, a group of teachers and an administrator at each school site to kind of spearhead the planning for that. And then the money is there. We can begin funding those wellness areas and things like the library with Miss Nowacki, our district librarian, is doing some great things with maker spaces and stress relief in the library and redesign of libraries, making libraries places where students can go to relax and de-stress and enjoy themselves. So we really are looking forward to what each school site's going to come up with. I think it's going to be very creative and very exciting.
Okay, thank you. And it's now 7:01, so I do want to just touch on a couple of things really quickly here, kind of on the similar thing to the drug prevention. Someone, Jacqueline said, did anyone mention drug prevention schools similar to the DARE program back in the day? I think DARE still exists actually, but yeah, is there anything we can talk about with that, or anything related to that this funding might be used for?
Actually, we're really excited because we actually have a director of student services, and really his task is to really work with our families and our communities and our staff on these kinds of things. So there are actually funding already that he's working with to really support these kinds of work. I don't believe we have anything currently as ideas in the ESSER fund, but it's actually something that we're working on. It's really just kind of a base program, really supporting our school sites with drug awareness and prevention programs.
So there were a few other things here. There was one that came in well before the end here about getting water refilling stations on the campuses. Someone asking, can they have water bottles available in class? And then there was another individual that was asking if they can have water refilling on the campus, and just saying that their kids are running out of water at the end. So, Dr. Hawkins, is that anything you'd want to talk about?
You know, I'm glad for the question. I just did a site visit at one of our schools, and this is just not particular to the school that I visited, and we discussed that, but we've also been discussing that in executive cabinet. And we're in the process now of looking at the cost and the expenditure run and how we can use ESSER dollars to meet that need. Because when you look at the COVID-19 pandemic and individuals touching, you know, we want to go touchless as much as possible, whether it's individuals washing their hands and not touching the valves, or whether it's flushing commodes or whatnot. So that is something that we're looking at. We're looking at how many we need per site, and once Mr. Jergensen has finished his analysis, we will come back out, and I believe I can say assuredly, even on behalf of the superintendent, we will roll that out once we see how we can operationalize it.
Okay, so there are a few things here that we did not talk about tonight, but the whole reason that we did it this way is because when you all come in here, first of all, it's easy for you to be here. At the peak tonight, we had over 80 of you in here. And I think we can tell you from back in the days when we would do these things live, we'd be lucky if we get, just a handful of people at these things. So it's really great to get 80 of you in here at any one time with these ideas. And then those of you who might see it afterward, you can email me or email Dr. Yee or Ms. Foote. You saw those email addresses earlier. But I do want to say that these questions aren't ignored, because every single one of these, we now have a record. And that's the reason we wanted to do it this way, is that we have it all written down now. Every single one of these questions is here. And Ms. Foote and Dr. Yee are taking this very seriously, because this is part of the process with ESSER, is getting input on exactly what we can do with this money, and seeing if it's something we can spend the money on or not. And so this meeting has definitely accomplished its purpose, which is we've gotten input from staff, from community, even a couple of students, I think maybe. And it's just so great to have all of this stuff and to have all of this here in the chat. So if we didn't actually verbally answer your question, do not despair. We're going to read every single one of these, okay? So with that, let's go to some closing comments. I'm going to start off with our superintendent, Dr. Ron Williams.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this evening. It's been a pleasure. We've collected the information from you, and we look forward to making it happen in regards to our ESSER 3 funding source. And we really appreciate you taking out the time to give us the input.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Yee.
On the same vein, just thank you everyone for being here this evening and giving us some really good ideas of how we can spend our ESSER dollars. And we look forward to connecting with you the next time.
Okay, and Dr. Rubalcaba.
It's always great to be here on these platforms with students, families, and staff. And I wish everyone a great evening.
Okay, thank you for joining us. And also, Dr. Antoine Hawkins, what would you like to say?
There were three things I wanted to highlight really quickly. Number one is I want our community to know that these are funds that are given by the federal government and some were state funds that are based on the COVID-19 pandemic and learning loss. So when we talk about school buses and some of the peripheral questions, those are phenomenal questions. We appreciate them. But I want you just to think in your mind and frame that these funds are tied to all that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, students not being in the classroom, and for us to have an infusion of dollars to be able to meet that need. Secondarily, it is for the safe environment when our students came back to school. Dr. Rubalcaba talked earlier about wipes, PPE. So these dollars are primarily generated for those two areas, and there are some peripherals that deal with HVAC, infiltration systems. There are some that deal with mental health and so forth. But we want you just to keep that in your mind as you're framing your thoughts and even shooting us ideas. We would love to use these dollars any way that we could, but they're restricted dollars for their intended purposes. And I just want to share that. And then finally, the last thing is this. I'd like to galvanize our community to contact your congressperson, whoever that is. There are some things going on at the federal level right now that deals with the debt limit, and you've probably seen this in the news. The impact of that is if the debt limit is not expanded and it's not increased, or Congress does not come to some type of solution, then things like ESSER dollars will slow down or halt or stop because the federal government cannot go beyond its spending limit. So that's something I want our community to be cognizant of. I will be regurgitating this during our next board meeting. So we really, really need to put some pressure on our congressional people, whether at the congressional level or the Senate level, that we need these dollars to continue to flow, and they need to get it together to make sure that they don't stop. We've put in for our resources to be able to flow to us this final 53 million or so, but we don't want to get caught up in some federal stuff. So I just want to share those 3 points because I think that they're very important to this discourse or to this discussion. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. And I did want to just talk really quickly here. Jiang Zhang says, is it possible for community meetings to happen during school hours? I believe more students should have a voice in their opinions. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, yes, we are going to do some student forums, and we were talking about doing those via Zoom where we can reach out to students and have them actually speak directly to us. And we did a little bit of that last year, and we're planning on doing that again this year. And before I get to Ms. Foote, who's going to close us out, I do want to talk really quickly about another event we have coming up next week, and that is our Supper with the Superintendent. And this is something that we did pre-COVID. We did it all the time. We had people come, and there's free food, and we sit and we have a meal, and we talk, and Dr. Williams gives a talk, and usually we have the cabinet there as well, and you're able to just ask questions there live. We're going to do it kind of a hybrid way. We're going to do a mix of what we're doing tonight as well as doing it live in person there at the campus. So if you want to attend in person, you can email Richard Gonzalez, that's R. Gonzalez, Gonzalez with an S, at vbuhsd.org, or you can watch it where you're watching it now on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. So that's going to be next Tuesday, September 28th. The in-person starts at 6, and then once everybody is able to eat a meal, we will do the virtual at 6:30. I do want to just mention really quickly, we've got these vaccination events which continue next week. Well, actually Friday, University Prep, September 24th, Cobalt Institute of Math and Science, September 27th, Lakeview Leadership Academy, September 29th. So I do want to mention those. And so to talk us out here, Christine Foote, what would you like to say?
To talk us out. I think I've talked everyone out tonight, Mr. Riley. I want to thank everyone for their support. I know this takes time out of your evening schedules when we're having meals with our families and we're doing homework with our kids and we're touching base about how our day went. And so I want to thank everyone for being here and giving us your fabulous input. And we do take into consideration a lot of your input, and we look in the plans, we look at the funding requirements, and if we can fit it in, we will. We will do everything to make sure that our schools are a safe place and that mental health and student wellness and teacher wellness and family wellness is our priority. So thank you again for once more for being here. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. Good night.
Good night.